Welcome to the OEMs, Blockers and Breakthroughs podcast, brought to you by Partful. I am your host, Tanya Tran, Partful Head of Marketing. We're here to share real stories from real companies and real people to help OEMs overcome challenges and be amongst those most forward-thinking teams. Thank you for joining us today, Claire and Carl again. Good to have you again, but this is the first time ever our audience get to hear Claire in our podcast. So the reason why we've got Carl and Claire joining today is they are our experts in dealing with bills of materials within the business from our clients, OEMs. Today, we want to be able to highlight what problems are there in the industry in using bills of materials or managing bills of materials, and how can we help OEMs solve those problems in order to set them up for a better future. So, Carl and Claire, would you like to introduce yourself? For Carl's reintroduction, can you remind our audience who you are and your background?
I'm the head of engineering at Partful. I'm a subject matter expert from industry in the way that from production to vehicle manufacturing. So, I help the team and support the team to understand things like bill of materials and production sort of ideas and processes.
Thanks, Carl. Claire.
Thank you for the lovely welcome, Tanya. It's very exciting and not at all nerve-wracking. So for our lovely audience, my name's Clare Cormican. I'm one of the product managers here at Partful. Just coming from my first year in this particular business with a background in my previous career in SaaS within the e-commerce industry. So it's a new industry for me, but not a new type of product. And it's been really, really exciting to spend the last year sort of learning all about the OEM industry and from experts like Carl and Tanya and the rest of the lovely people in our company. So hoping I can have a really useful contribution today.
Thanks both. Sam can't join us today because he's got some urgent work to be doing on the investment side. So we're currently fundraising, and I'm going to try and carry all the weight today. Episode, but I'm sure my two lovely guests will be able to contribute into a really interesting conversation that we are going to have today. I think my first question for both of you is that why is it so important to an OEM business? And from your experience, especially Carl, in your decades of experience in manufacturing industry and specialist vehicles, why is it that there are some common mistakes or some problems in the practices that companies have in terms of creating and managing BoMs?
So BoM is king, effectively. If you haven't got a BoM, you haven't got a product. It's really as simple as that. Without a bill of materials, you can't build anything. And it's right there at the beginning. So if someone has an idea, then we need to convert that idea into a product, and we need a bill of materials to drive that process to get that out the door. If I had to say where it goes wrong, I could be here for hours. But generally, what will happen is there'll be some smart guys that design something. Then there will be an engineering team to make that happen. There will be an awful lot of pressure on getting to market, and that product will go through several design stages, and they'll be accepted or not accepted, and things will change as it's being developed. Usually that usually takes a lot longer than most people think it should do, and then gets pushed into production. So the BoM will change at that point. It go from an engineering BoM to a manufacturing BoM. Now, it should be fully developed by that point, but generally there's an awful lot of tidying up that needs to be done, and production will more than likely start before that tidying up has happened. And then by the time they start producing things, they're on to the next thing. So without that, people being disciplined enough, then it's usually down to the people, not to the process. So we end up people building stuff, and then suddenly it doesn't work, and then the bill of materials is not in a condition to be, because manufacturing have changed the bill of materials in a way that they can produce a thing. So this has been known for years. This cycle that happens within industry and manufacturing. So then there was lots of tools put in place, PDMs, PLMs, to manage these BoMs, and lots of sort of rules and change processes and stuff to put in. But unfortunately, still the weak point is the individuals that sit within that process. So that, if I had to say, that's where it goes. It's down to individuals making decisions or not finishing things that generally cause issues with bill of materials. And it could be not intended. You start off with material that you can purchase, and then halfway through the design or when you go into production, you cannot now purchase that material. So then they haven't got time to go back and redo everything. So something's done on the fly. So as soon as that happens, it's wrong. Everything's changes.
Yeah.
I think something that we've seen as well, isn't it, from existing client data and working very, very closely with our client partners, is that there's no uniformity around bill of materials formats, is there? Like, everyone kind of just makes it up as they go along, which means that, even within the same business, there's a lack of uniformity, let alone within different businesses. So I think that is a challenge in itself as well, isn't it? It's just no structure, no framework, making it up as we go along. It's never going to be conducive to productivity at its best, is it really?
Yeah, and I feel like as a tech business, like a tech platform ourselves, working with different OEMs and different business practices, we feel that pain more than anyone, right? So I'd like to go back to Carl and potentially at Claire, if you have any experience working with our existing customers as well. What are the consequences? If you can share an example or story of a business consequence.
So companies I worked from in the past, what would happen is someone would design something that would go into production and vehicles would be produced from that. So then it was up to my team, because I was in the support team, then to obviously develop the parts catalogues and supply the parts to the end user. So that was all very good in the world. So we went from the E-BoM, the engineering BoM, it had gone through the cycle of the manufacturing BoM, and then we, a lot later on, would build the S-BoM. So everything's good in the world till someone actually decides to build a very similar car, and they go, I know what we're going to use. We're going to use the part from that other car on this car because we've already designed it. Someone then decides it doesn't quite fit in the same way because the car has changed. So they then change the original part, then they up the level of the part. So original part was at level A, the new car is going to take level B, even though the business has got serialization and it's got, they've ignored the main fact that fit, form, function. Is the part still going to be fit and form and the function the same? So we're now supplying a part that doesn't fit the car anymore because they've up-revved the part but haven't followed the rules. So when they changed the part, if it fitted and its form was the same and its function was the same, then we would have been able to use it. They've broken one of those three laws effectively because they should have changed the part number as soon as it goes outside those three. So I remember sending some very expensive glass to around the world, and it cost the business in excess of £80,000 because someone changed the part, didn't change the part number, up-revved it, but it had changed its fit, form and function. So that's an example how wrong that can go.
If a decision is made on the fly like that to change something in a quite a scrappy way, right? How can the OEM make sure that the changes happen or the decisions made on the fly are recorded, tracked within their bills of materials or whatever platform, like centralized source of truth that they have?
Yeah, after that, we actually changed our practices. We put in PDM, which then managed the part in the system properly. We looked at our change process, and made sure that it was just not internal to engineering, it was external to support as well. So we had sight of the change process, so we could go, why are you changing that part? Does it drop outside these rules? So it is having a footing. It's all about the change process really, and how the CAD sits within the business, because you can get that you could have an engineering CAD drawing here and a sales BoM drawing down there, and if they don't update each other, you're going to get into all sorts of trouble with that and have the same experience. So it may not be to an individual just being lazy or new or whatever. It may be actually the process and the system is not keeping up with itself. And we ended up having to secure the bill of materials for the SBOM down in a separate way. So which wasn't the right way to do it in the business, but it did give us some sort of warning if something was happening elsewhere. And in that case, we had several different sites, so we weren't in the same building. So, that can happen as well. And it's just a part number. And it looks, on the screen, it looks like the same part. And it's just been up-revved, so it may be a material change within it. So you're going, well, they would have noticed the fact they've changed the size. So not necessarily it would have highlighted. But if your change process system comes through and says this is changed because of, you then need to go back and go, you can't change that part. It can't be done. You need to keep it the same because we've got X amount of thousands of vehicles with that part fitted, and they're all serialized. So it happens. And the other thing is that adds to this is the disconnect between support and engineering. How that journey is so far away. It sort of highlights the fact that generally, definitely in the smaller businesses, support is not embedded into engineering in any way. It's just an afterthought that happens. So being that far away, you can't go, don't do silly things. We've got to sell these items. Is it sellable? There's that sort of thing. And that's the reason why we build the tools in the way we build them, to draw this together as if we're going to do something, let's do it at the beginning, not at the end.
I think that speaks to the inconsistency between the different tooling across the business and across the product lifestyle as well, doesn't it? Like the life cycle, sorry. So you mentioned that you had to make a decision that you switched to a proper PDM system. But even then, like if you've got the PDM system at the early stage of the life cycle, and then you've got a completely separate sales system, ERP system, dealer management system, whatever it might be, on the other end of the sales and service part of the life cycle, and if those aren't connected in any way, how on earth do you track revision changes and version changes and anything else? There's not just one source of truth at that point, is there? They're all completely disparate and often not talking to each other, which means that you end up with just lots of different data sets in their own little silos, and it's a lot of effort to try and reconnect them again. I think that's something we've seen quite a lot in terms of the data that we're receiving to work with. Is just there's just a real disconnect, and there's a lot of manual intervention, which straight away then you've broken that digital thread. Nothing's properly connected throughout that life cycle. So that's definitely something we've seen a fair amount of.
That's kind of echoed across the industry, right? Mm-hmm. Sam posted a really transparent post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago around the state of the industry and how siloed departments are within an OEM business. And so many thought leaders in the industry kind of echoed that perspective. Everyone kept hammering on around the departments are disconnected between support department and engineering and procurement and go-to-market, commercial. And everyone's kind of craving for a solution. But, I kind of suggested that the solution is kind of non-existent at the moment, right? Like, how do we integrate these departments together to make them streamlined? That's kind of non-existent, is because of the mindset isn't established in terms of supportability or design for supportability, which is the concept that Sam has been hammering for so long. I think that brings me nicely to the next question, which is, why do you think these issues persist despite the availability of more advanced tools and technology. So, you both mentioned like PDM, ERPs, PLMs, these are very complex systems. And I think these systems are trying to solve the problems but from different angles with different approaches and for different teams. So you've got what we've been saying, and is that PDM and PLMs are for engineering department. You've got ERP for procurement and kind of the wider business. And these two systems most of the times don't integrate or don't talk to each other properly. But there are advanced tools and they still can't really solve these issues. Why do you think that is?
I think in some cases they do. I've got slightly disagree. In some cases, if you look at PLMs hold everything together as a whole. That's the point of them. PDMs are a slightly lower version of that, and they do talk to PLMs. PLM is made up of an ERP and a PDM and all the other CAD software and all of that. It sort of ties it all together, and then in theory should talk. It's like the mother. It just gets everything to talk to each other. Cost is a great driver in here. How many tools can you pay for? I mean, you get SolidWorks or CATIA or something like that. They're not cheap, and every time you bolt a package onto them, it becomes more and more expensive. And then you've got to justify that. You've got to justify what department pays for that cost. If you look at SolidWorks, you go, all right, the whole business will need to pay for SolidWorks and SolidWorks PDM because the whole business is gaining out of it. But then if you go, well, I want SolidWorks Composer, for instance, because I want to do some publications or whatever, that then goes, well, that's the after sales department who have to pay for that. But actually it's driven by engineering because engineering need to use the tool as well as after sales. And so after sales, then they need to take it out of the profit of the parts. So some of it's driven by cost, and it's not getting any cheaper. That's the thing is, it's not cheap building stuff, and then purchasing want it in one way, like you say, and after sales need it in another way, and engineering need this other tool. We were forever buying tools and forever trying to justify the cost of that. And you're right, do they talk together? Most ERP systems and DMSs actually talk very well. They communicate very well as long as it's set up properly. And then if you've got to start paying for APIs and stuff. So I mean, I've heard in businesses all the time where we're going, we can only have X amount of users on that. We're not going to pay for another license for this and that and the other thing. And that drives some of the difficulties, the cost of it all. And then it's only as good as the data you put in, which is one of the other big drivers. So if the data is old or it can't be transferred or it hasn't been set up properly, you can have actually really good data in your PDM, but really bad data in your ERP because someone hasn't set it up. And most ERPs, you can overwrite the data of the PDM. So is it up to date? As Claire said, the digital thread is a really important thing. And that's another reason why we are doing what we're doing, is we're trying to make sure that it's a single point of truth from that CAD model, and any changes or anything later on will be reflected in a fairly straightforward fashion as well, with choice, but sensible choices.
I think as well there's the human element, isn't there? Because there's, like we said, some of these systems, they're incredibly complex to use. They're also incredibly complex to implement, as well as costly, as you said there, Carl. So, I imagine a lot of companies will struggle to justify not just the cost investment, but the time investment to upskill and to train, employees and things like that to manage that changeover. And ultimately, we're human. As a core function, a lot of us are very resistant to change. So, as soon as you know that it's going to cost you money and it's going to cost you time, and it's just going to be new and scary and unfamiliar, there's a real gut reaction, isn't there, to, that's so much work. Do we really need to do that? So I think that, again, just in terms of our interactions with our users and with our partners and things, you pick up on little attitudes like that. And it's not shared across the board, of course. It's not, there's some amazing forward thinkers in the industry and amongst our client base as well. I'm not throwing any shade at anybody at all. But you just, like I say, it's a very gut reaction, isn't it? Of like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Do we really need to do that now? And, it might be that someone higher up yes, we absolutely do, but then the people on the ground that are actually using it don't adopt it or resist adopting it, and that can be a major issue as well. So I think just usability as well as implementation complexity is so key, and having that intuitive, user-friendly user experience is such a key part of anything. And these are very, very complex problems that these systems and softwares are out there to solve. Solving a complex problem with a simple user interface is a real massive challenge. And as a product manager, that's a big part of what we're here to do, is find the solution that is as easy as possible to adopt. I think that's just much harder when you extrapolate out, the amount of data, the amount of people, the amount of different, moving parts. It's a very, very difficult thing to comprehend to start the process. I think, just resistance naturally to change, really.
Mm-hmm. I think that is a perfect segue into what I'd really like to summarize in terms of like the problems that the industry professionals are facing, like in after sales or the wider OEM community, is that what I've heard from you both, the problems we're facing right now is the standardization of the data format. So we've got, different teams using different types of BoMs, but also different business have different perceptions of how they want to create the BoMs or the format of it and how they manage the data, right? And then you've got the changes and the decisions made and updates made on the fly that are not tracked properly. And if they want to track them or record them, it's really complex. And sometimes it takes a lot of time and effort to go back and make the changes. And then you've got systems and platforms, technologies that are too complex to set up and then too costly in both time and money, right, for the businesses. Those are the problems, which brings me nicely to the next question, which I've got for both of you, which is, we all know that we've been developing this amazing, really exciting 2.0 platform for Partful that is automated and self-serve. How are we taking these problems into account when we're developing our new platform in order to solve these issues for our OEM community?
So I think there's been a lot of discussion around that for all the right reasons, of course. We want to make sure that we are making a product that is implementable and is user friendly. So I think there's a lot of different parts of what we've already talked about that have fed into our discovery and research and our development of the new platform. As we've acknowledged, many companies out there are still reliant on tools like Excel, or even if they have the slightly more advanced systems, you've got your CAD design softwares, your PLMs, your PDMs, your ERPs, you've still got these data silos that complicate the ability to create an accurate BoM and synchronize it across that life cycle. So because that data is spread around, like there's no, or very rarely there's that single source of truth. So we've obviously had to acknowledge that head on. That's the biggest pain point really that makes it so difficult. So there's all these different sources of truth. We know that in order to provide that, an accurate parts catalog, which is ultimately one of our core products, we need a solution that can ingest all these different types of data from different sources and at different stages of the life cycle, and somehow knit those together and to reconnect and protect that digital thread within Partful, which in turn then has that benefit of not just you've got a nice parts catalog at the end of it, but you've got your digital thread back. Everything's there, it's all accounted for, it's all knit back together if it has become split out within the OEM business. So to answer the question a bit more directly, our Partful 2.0 platform, we've built an entirely new platform infrastructure. Literally everything's different than it was before, and part of that is a really robust new data store, and that's been architected to begin from that start of the product lifecycle with the unique part identifiers and attributes from that CAD design file, which of course is also part of the engineering BoM in terms of the actual data that comes with it. So that can be curated by the user, but crucially through that user-friendly self-authoring interface. So that was one of the problems we touched on a little bit before, is that the complexity of these systems that are already in these OEMs, or the lack of complexity if you're just relying on millions of Excel sheets. Regardless, you need a simple, intuitive way of bringing those together. So we will then present our users with that core product data that we've ingested from that engineering data stage, from the CAD and the engineering BoM. And we've created these just super, super simple templated formats. We know the industry is really familiar with working in Excel, so it's very much kind of that same kind of vein for our first iteration of this feature set anyway, which makes it super simple to gather that sales content from the after sales and service end of the product lifecycle, and sort of match it together with that CAD data to knit those parts of the business together. And even if you've got different part numbers and identifiers that are being used between the engineering function in the PDM and things and the after sales function of the ERP, we've got these two different sources of truth at this point, and we know they need to be matched together by the engineering attributes and by the sales content to create a sales ready product in the parts catalog and in our other product suites. That also makes it possible to accurately curate the lowest sellable units as well, because of course not everything in that CAD model at the engineering point is actually going to be sellable. Either it's been manually merged together, welded whatever within the manufacturing process, or it's just you don't sell that particular individual part, you sell it as part of an assembly instead. So curating those lowest sellable units to make sure that all of that lovely rich engineering data is actually sales focused and supportable from a sales and distribution function. So being able to curate that, add all the necessary sales content like your sales part numbers if they're different from the engineering part numbers, which we know they 99% of the time they are, your descriptions, your prices, your assembly and your part options, organising your assemblies and parts into the appropriate parts categories and kits to curate that journey, that navigational journey for your end user, the buyer, towards successful and efficient parts identification. So there's so many things in this that we had to try and create this simple user experience for, even though it's really complex behind the scenes. So at the end of our self-authoring product creation process, there will be a complete digital thread for the product. So it takes it from the engineering stage through to the after sales stage with, and obviously it's beautifully presented and animated 3D parts catalog, but crucially all of that data is there and all of the sales content from the sales BoM. And changes and updates, of course, as well. It's not just one and done. These things change. Even the CAD designs can change, probably less frequently, but the sales BoM is going to have updated prices, maybe descriptions might change, names might change, things like that. So we just got to make sure that all those sources of truth are represented, but also the updates are traced and trackable through those changes. I think that one of the things to mention as well is that we, behind the scenes, we've got full data versioning being built in, which again, that's part of the re-architecture of the platform. So every change is captured and logged, and so for the user, controlling when an updated product goes live in the parts catalog and tracking those changes over time becomes not only possible but really simple and accessible as well. And that's the key thing, is that accessibility and that usability for that data, for it to really be valuable. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
I mean, from my point, someone who's built parts catalogues in the past on a regular basis, you're right, Claire, the data gets out of date before you know it. Mm-hmm. So the real key to this is it's going to save so much time. It saves so much time building that SBOM. And then we can export the SBOM into Excel if we want to, but it's there. It's everything's around you. You've built it. You've sat in one environment. You haven't gone out to the car. You haven't gone and done all this stuff. Look, trying to find the CAD model and the other bits because it's not quite clear enough. But this is all in front of you. You're going, there's an engineering part number. Now it's an SBOM part number. It could be the same part number, but we've accepted that's a sellable part and that's the level we want to sell it at. It contains all these other parts below it because that's what we're selling with it. Or are we building it into a kit? We want a kit of parts. We want to do that. So we go, yes, that one, that's now in the kit. And we can display the kit separately. We halo around the kit parts. Buy this is what you're going to get. So, it's from a speed point of view, it's massive.
Yeah, and I think as head of marketing at Partful, right, the last point around low cost, how do we make it low cost for OEMs to have something like this? Not just low cost in terms of what they have to pay for the platform, but also low cost in terms of the effort and the time they need in order to onboard a platform like this and actually start generating ROI, right? I can assure you that Partful is nowhere near a PLM system or an ERP system. It takes a matter of days to onboard your team. I use the analogy of Canva. I'm not sure if anyone knows of Canva. Canva's really, really popular in the design marketing space. And it's basically, it's like you jumping on it and you start creating your content. Automation helps you. You control your data. You update your changes easily with the data within from different teams within the business, and you keep that digital thread intact. And that's the key thing. Like, you make the match between the engineering data and the sales data, and you create your own after sales database that is fit for purpose of supporting models and improving the quality of care. And that's what we're trying to do here at Partful. So my next question is, I think it's quite philosophical, maybe, but looking forward into the future, right? How do you see the role of BoM management evolving, especially with digital thread in manufacturing kind of being the conversation happening quite frequently right now?
To be fair, I think it's one of those things that is just a thing. There's always going to be bill of materials. There will be more software. There will be more PLMs. There will be better and things. There will be there's huge areas that definitely need supporting. Support is one of them. I think really around the purchasing guys need a bit more help with a bit more visual stuff with what they're buying. They can buy anything from a screw to a big metal panel. So 3D models will get better. I'm not saying they're bad now. I think we're part of that journey by being the 3D environment into mainstream 2D world. I've been working 40 years with two-dimensional stuff. Now we're in 3 dimensions, which is absolutely really exciting, cutting edge stuff. I don't think we're all going to run out and buy some goggles tomorrow, but go completely virtual. But the thing is I think we're there because we're providing a need, and that need goes across not just the Partful parts catalogue, but through things we talked about in previous podcasts, like the works instructions in 3Ds, the repair instructions in 3Ds, marketing in 3Ds from our initial consumption of the CAD into the system. As soon as we've ingested that CAD, we can do anything with it because it is in front of us. What do we want to do with it? It's our aspirations that's going to limit what we do. Now we can fully ingest it in a way that no one else is, and at the speed. So it's gonna be an interesting future.
I think then there needs to be that cultural acceptance within the industry, doesn't there, that the digital thread is so important. And I don't think anyone could really deny that, but I think there's a convenience there that it's not that important because we don't do it and we don't know how to do it and that kind of thing. But I think once that is more widely not just accepted but actually actioned across the industry, that means you're going to have that seamless flow of data across the product life cycle. So you're connecting then obviously the design and the manufacturing and the after sales and the service and the support. But I think that as well means that like sales BoMs and BoMs in general, not that they're just static documents now, but again, we have still acknowledged that there are still businesses out there just using multiple Excel sheets, which that's a static document. A human's got to go in and do something with that, or it's got to be built to trigger from another data set. But making sure that the BoM is part of a real time evolving digital environment that reflects every change in the design and the manufacture and the sales content, and that's the core of it, right? It has to be a living, breathing thing. Maybe not breathing because it's tech, but who knows where AI will take us in the future. But it's that's the core of it, really, isn't it? And I think as well, like, focus needs to shift from just managing data to leveraging it for strategic decision making, right? Enabling companies to anticipate issues and improve product quality and just deliver better customer experiences. That's the crucial part, and the businesses that are doing that and are forward thinking in that area are going to be the ones that drive the industry forward, and everyone else is going to hopefully fall in line when they see how transformative that is.
Yeah. I think you both have said it perfectly, and I have nothing else to add. And I just want to plug our product in here about Partful 2.0. We are on an exciting journey of developing this new platform that is automated, self-serve, and will be the great foundation for real-time integration into PLM and ERP for OEM after-sales communities globally to control your data and improve the quality and performance of your department. And exciting things are coming soon, and we're looking to launch it very, very soon as well. If you'd like to keep up to date with our product releases and be the first people to early adopt our platform, go to partful.io/partful-2.0. Again, partful.io/partful-2.0. All the information's on there, what we're developing. Sign up for the waitlist and to have updates on product releases and our launch, which will be coming soon in the next couple of months. That's all for today, and thank you so much, Carl and Claire, for sharing your perspective and allowing me to be able to tease our exciting development. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely day.